For most of us, the Rose Parade is just, well, it's that wholesome, flower-covered spectacle we end up watching while nursing a New Year's Day hangover, right? But today, let's dive into this explainer and unpack a really fascinating and honestly highly unconventional analysis of the 1971 Tournament of Roses parade. Our source text presents a lens that completely reimagines this classic American tradition. It takes us way beyond the floats and the marching bands to explore this hidden, complex intersection of civic ritual, elite networking, and religious fervor. We're going to see how a sunny California morning might have actually been something far more calculated.
So we're going to explore a pretty provocative theory from our source material. It basically asks, was the 1971 Rose Parade just a simple flower show or a masterclass in social control? Think about the cultural volatility of that era for a second. We're talking massive anti-war protests, huge civil rights struggles, and a youth culture that just felt entirely out of the establishment's control. The text argues that this specific parade wasn't just a civic celebration at all. Instead, it was a carefully orchestrated public display designed to rein in all that chaotic energy and essentially reestablish a sense of deep societal compliance.
To understand exactly how this worked, let's start with Layer 1, the 1971 Rose Parade spectacle. Picture the scene. The nation is steeped in anxiety, and under the smog-tinged sunshine of Pasadena, a very calculated ritual unfolds. Billy Graham, a figure the text refers to as the Protestant Pope because of his immense influence over American life, served as Grand Marshal. And marching right alongside him was the sudden mainstream appearance of the Jesus people. The so-called Jesus freaks, with their raised index fingers signaling one way. The pairing of the nation's most powerful preacher with this newly baptized youth culture, the source says that was no accident. The text anchors its entire analysis on this concept of a unifying farce. Think of it like a giant magician's sleight of hand. The public is given this shiny, patriotic, flower-covered spectacle to look at, while the actual work of cementing elite power happens safely behind the curtain. The volatile revolutionary energy of the 60s was deliberately redirected into a manageable, pro-establishment force.
Which naturally brings us to Layer 2, Pasadena's hidden power network, because you have to ask, who exactly was orchestrating this unifying farce?
Where did they get the authority to do this in the first place? To find out, our source pulls us away from the bell-bottoms of the 1970s and directly into the origins of a highly influential, yet largely unseen, network of California elites. The roots of this power stretch all the way back to the late 19th century. If we map out the timeline, the true genesis of this spectacle lies with the Valley Hunt Club, founded in 1888. And this wasn't just some casual recreational club for wealthy locals, it was literally a crucible for establishing an elite Anglo-Protestant social order in Southern California. They launched the first festival in 1890 and quickly realized, hey, we need to institutionalize this ritual, so they formed the Tournament of Roses Association in 1895. As they consolidated their wealth, they built the Grand Clubhouse in 1908 and eventually constructed the massive Rose Bowl Stadium in 1921. In just a few decades, they had completely embedded themselves into the civic and cultural architecture of Pasadena.
It's pretty fascinating when you see how this specific area transformed. Orange Grove Boulevard went from being a simple site of citrus production into this highly concentrated corridor of financial and social power for what the text calls managerial Protestants. Essentially, these were wealthy, elite movers and shakers who treated culture and religion as tools to be managed and deployed to maintain social order. Orange Grove Boulevard literally became known as Millionaire's Row. It was the physical manifestation of an elite network that viewed California not just as an economic opportunity, but as a crucial stepping stone for broader national influence.
Now let's step into Layer 3, manufacturing the Jesus generation. Let's see how this elite network utilized the emerging Jesus movement as a strategic solution. By the time 1971 rolled around, the establishment was facing a massive cultural problem. They were absolutely terrified of the 1960s counterculture. The radical anti-war hippie dropouts were viewed as a profound, destabilizing threat to American capitalism and traditional life. So the establishment needed to swing the pendulum back. Enter the Jesus people. The source analysis suggests that this group provided a safe mechanism to reintroduce conservative values. Think of it kind of like a corporate rebrand of youth rebellion. They still had the long hair, they still played acoustic guitars, but their underlying message was strictly traditional, compliant, and fundamentalist leaning. They were literally the perfect antidote to radicalism. And this whole shift, it definitely wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate media blitz. Major communication empires orchestrated a massive campaign to sanitize and canonize this new Jesus generation.
It actually all started back in 1949 with the famous Puff Graham memo. That's where media mogul William Randolph Hearst explicitly told his editors to promote Billy Graham to help fight the cultural threat of communism. Jump forward to 1971 and you see a masterclass in synergy. Graham publishes his book The Jesus Generation to officially codify the movement, landing at the exact same time Time magazine releases a massive cover story to mainstream the Jesus Revolution to the American middle class.
All of this culminated on New Year's Day. To put the sheer scale of this into perspective, imagine being one of the more than 1 million people standing shoulder to shoulder along that parade route, or one of the tens of millions more watching on color television at home. The Rose Parade wasn't just some local party anymore. It was the ultimate, highly visible stage for this national consolidation. Billy Graham's encounter with the youth along the route was immediately framed by national media as a cloud of impending revival. It effectively blessed the youth and the nation with traditional Christian imagery on a massive, massive scale.
But it actually doesn't stop there. Layer 4 reveals a global missiological strategy.
The crucial point here is that this local Pasadena power network didn't just stop at the borders of California. No, they had immense global ambitions. The 1971 parade was basically just a domestic prototype for a much larger strategy. This is where it gets genuinely wild. Research from the text reveals startling membership overlaps between Pasadena's local elites and the absolute pinnacles of global governance. The very same people organizing a flower parade and mingling at the Valley Hunt Club were frequently connected to the Council on Foreign Relations and the Club of Rome, groups synonymous with elite global policymaking. They were also tied to major religious data hubs like World Vision. Pasadena was essentially operating as a strategic nexus, where local networks directly interfaced with global architects.
Institutions like Fuller Theological Seminary in Pasadena functioned as the intellectual engine for all of this. They turned the 1971 parade template into a blueprint for a global Christian empire. They developed what's called the People Approach to World Evangelization. Basically, it's a strategy of targeting specific cultural groups to convert them wholesale, which heavily influenced the Lausanne Covenant of 1974. The ultimate goal? To permanently link spiritual revival to the social status quo. By exporting a wholesome patriotic brand of American Christianity, they were simultaneously exporting American capitalism and neutralizing the threat of radical social change worldwide. It's a 2-for-1 deal for the establishment.
Okay, if you thought the geopolitical overlap was strange, wait until you hear the final layer. Layer 5, Ritual and Social Transmutation. We are peeling back the last layer to look at the deeply unconventional, parapolitical theories of James Shelby Downard, presented in The Source. This takes the analysis from sociology straight into the realm of the esoteric. Downard utilizes a framework called synchromysticism. It's essentially the belief that mundane geography and public events are actually steeped in deep, hidden, magical symbolism. To Downard, Pasadena, which is known as the Crown City, acts as a symbol of elite sovereign authority. Orange Grove Boulevard isn't just a street, it serves as a literal ritual corridor of social display. And the rose itself? It isn't merely a flower. He argues it's a Rosicrucian anchor signifying alchemical completion commercialized right in front of us to mask these elite power dynamics. Following this bizarre and fascinating framework, even the Rose Bowl Stadium itself gets analyzed as a strategic ritual arena. It sits down in the Arroyo Seco, which translates to the dry wash. According to Downard's esoteric theory, this geographical basin is utilized to literally catch and cleanse the emotional energy of 100,000 screaming football fans. It relies on intense, passion-themed messaging that serves to process the collective subconscious, fundamentally rebinding the public to elite, collective authority. The text wraps up with a pretty striking conclusion. The unifying farce allows the hidden world power of Pasadena to bloom in the sun, while the deeper architecture of its control remains hidden in the shadows. That perfectly summarizes the entire analysis. Whether you are looking at it through the lens of media manipulation, global geopolitical strategy, or even esoteric ritual mechanics, the core point remains exactly the same. Genuine, grassroots movements are often hijacked by those already in power. The seamless integration of money, mission, and media ensures that popular movements are born in the shadow of the establishment and baptized by the press to serve the powers that be rather than actually challenge them. It's a fascinating framework, right? It completely recontextualizes the history we thought we knew, and honestly, it leaves us to wonder a lot about our own modern media consumption. So the next time you sit down to watch a massive civic parade or the Super Bowl or a global mega concert, maybe ask yourself, are you just watching a show, or are you actively participating in a carefully managed ritual of control, playing out right in the open? Thanks for joining us on this explainer. We'll see you next time.